Most of you need to stop throwing this for your approach shots and start throwing this. Don't get me wrong, I love the concept of the Berg and I think it is a wonderful tool, but not at the expense of you learning approach shot form. And this is really the first thing that you have to understand. A backhand approach shot is not the same form or even remotely close to the same form as a backhand drive. So you have to learn it completely separate. Just until you learn how to throw approach shots properly, I'm recommending that we put down the Berg for a little bit, just for a little bit, and then we can pick it back up for its proper use, which is to be able to throw hard and have the disc work the landing for you instead of you controlling the landing. The first thing that we need to address is the grip. Unlike when we're throwing our drives or when we're throwing shots for power, we want to make sure that we get this disc all the way in the back of our hand here. We don't want it off the back of the palm like we might do if we were trying to lay into one, right? So all the way in the back of the hand. You don't want to control the front of the disc. We're controlling more of the middle of the disc. The index finger can lay up on the rim here, especially if you're using something deep like a putter or even some mids. You don't want this finger hooked all the way in. We're not using the grip itself to get spin. We use our wrist for spin. So we have a little bit more of a passive wrist when we are driving on backhands. But since we're not bringing all that speed into the equation, it's really, really important that we control this shot mostly with the speed of our hand. So we will start with a bent wrist, and then we will pop our hand forward to where we want the disc to go. This is very, very point and shoot. So since we're mostly using the speed of the hand here out of the chest, we're gonna actually line up facing the target for the most part. We'll be a little bit turned. So if you're the target, instead of turning to where my chest is here, like a standstill drive, where I'm more side on with my hit, I wanna make sure that the basket can peek a little bit of my overthrow logo here. Right, so I'm a little bit turned, but it's got a sneak peek there. I'm not turned all the way. We don't need a coil because that's a distance mechanic. We want control here. Accuracy is the point. In other words, what we're doing is taking all of the big levers that our body has to generate power, we're taking those out of play. As the saying goes, don't bring a cannon to a rabbit hunt. You want ample munition for what you're hunting here. So we just get rid of the big mechanics. Staying open's a part of that. Also making sure that we don't have our feet closed. This is not the place you want to think about hip engagement. We want to just make sure that our lower body's not in the way for the most part on these control shots, right? We don't want to have to sling this backside all the way around. If this is my lie, I see a lot of amateurs, the biggest mistake that goes along with this is that they close themselves off and they're side onto the target here, like we had mentioned not to do. And then what they'll end up doing is one of two things. Either they'll control and have a nice control shot and they'll miss left because their body's this way. Now the lower body stops you early and you're stopped too closed up, which causes you to miss over this way. And you're just bringing too much into the equation. Instead of addressing my lie like that, remember we're gonna pop our hand out to where we want it to go. So for me, that's a little bit right of the basket. I'm peeking the logo to my target line and then I'm gonna pop my hand out there. The hips and everything are free to move. So it might look a little something like this. Let's take this a little bit further back. Now that we're a little bit further back, I can't just pop my hand here, so I need a little bit more juice. And the way that we're gonna get that is much different than a drive, of course, where we have this back swing. So instead of a back swing like we do on drive, we're actually gonna do an out swing or a side swing for this. So we keep the disc out away from our body and we can keep our chest towards the target, our eyes towards the target the whole time here and just get a little bit more. So a nice little rock motion here. You'll go out, in, and then out to wherever you're shooting, right? So out, in, out on your target line there. You can do this with a standstill or a little bit of a walk, whatever's comfortable. I like a little bit of a walk. So let me recap real quick the mechanics portion. Bent wrist, and we're gonna pop the wrist out to wherever we want the disc to leave our hand in that line that we want it to go on. So we're using a lot of the speed of the hand. Don't be afraid to add more speed with the hand if you need a little more juice. We're using this lever, and you'll get accurate with this small lever. Don't think like, oh, it's so hard to control that. You'll get it over time. Just trust where you're popping your hand out to, where you're popping it through. Second, we don't want to coil the upper body all the way back. We want to be fairly head on here. Same thing with the lower body. Don't get it crossed over to where you have to use all this energy to swing your hips around. And then lastly, if you need a little bit extra, it's okay to pop this disc out over here, side swing into this point and shoot there. Now, one of the most fun things to do is actually play with nose angle. I think most people will be learning to throw nose up approach shots so that they can run and keep it near the basket. You get to throw it in, and if you miss, it's not that big of a deal. Just in case you guys don't know how to throw nose up, just a reminder here is that in order to get this nose up, just pop this thumb down instead of popping it the opposite way. So we're gonna pronate our hand and we're gonna throw that thumb downwards as we go into the hit. And that will get us a nice nose up throw, which is super important in integrating drivers and things like that into your approach shots. So like the example that we started the video with, the whole point here is I would love for you to learn to throw nose up for situations like low ceiling shots where you need to throw a faster disc down, but when you throw a faster disc nose up, it actually lifts a lot more than a slower disc. Or that's been my experience. I'm just creating new science here. It's just my experience. One quick little tidbit on disc selection for this. When you start throwing nose up for these approach shots, you'll probably want to go more understable. So one of the most used approach shots disc when I'm throwing nose up is actually a paradox, which most people is like, whoa, this is too flippy. But when you start throwing nose up, it's obviously stalling it. And so you can get something really understable to go really straight if you put a little bit nose up on it, which is obviously really good if you're trying to throw in an approach shot or really hit a specific landing zone. So it takes a little bit more finesse, but I really encourage you to start messing around with that. And that's really the proof that you're nailing down this concept, is when you have the finesse to throw something really understable and not have it just burn over. Now that we've learned how to throw it, let me give you 2 drills that I give to my students to practice this. So I am set up about 100 feet from this DGA mock shift that we have here. Link is in the description below, and we can drop ship that from our store for you. So in the beginning, we're just gonna pop our hand out and try to throw them in actually, just so we can see where we're popping our hand out. This gives you instant feedback. So if it doesn't go to the basket, you didn't pop your hand out there. So here we go. Almost. Almost, right? And then later you can start messing with nose angle and tempo to not just get the direction, but the depth of the shot. So 2 benefits here. One, it's a super fun practice, and then you can go and just run your putts after that. And it's pretty encompassing, fun to hear chains, of course. And then the second is anytime I'm on a course and I want to hit a gap, I just use this approach shot form. And the basket is much smaller than most of the gaps that we're gonna have on the course, so you become oddly confident in your gap hitting. Now, of course, you cannot mention approach shot drills without mentioning the GOAT, the original, the OG of approach shot drills, and that is your simple game of catch. The upside to catch, of course, is that you don't have to walk back and forth, but the downside is you don't get to do it if you don't have any friends. Luckily for me, you know, Mikey's co-owner of the business, so he kind of has to play catch.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah, give me a little nose up. All right, now that you're practiced up, let's take this to the course. First place I wanted to take you to on the course, just your standard example of an approach shot here. My basket's a little bit uphill, so I'm not worried about running it too hard because I do have a bit of a backstop. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a go here, but my aim point that I'm setting up towards is this white tree on the right of the basket, the branches that come out. I've got my logo facing a little bit open. That branch can see my logo here. My hips are open to my target line, and I'm just gonna have my wrist curl and I'm gonna pop there. So that's how I'm lining up. Let's give this a little bit of a go here. Come on, get up. Okay, glitch. The second example I wanted to show you was here on a tee pad. I'm on a 200-foot hole here, so there's no reason for me to want to use my drive form when it's this short. I want to have something that's controlled and lands close to the basket. So I'm going to use my approach shot form on the tee pad. So it's really important that we don't get into this mindset of being side on and having all this muscle memory come into our mind here on the tee pad. We really need to deliberately focus on where we're pumping our hand out to for this tee shot, and we're just gonna walk, and I'm actually going to walk pretty straight forward, and I'll probably even plant a little bit open here because, again, I don't need all the hips. I just need this last little motion to pump it out to my target line. My last and favorite example happens actually a lot on this course. You overturn your drive, hit this tree, and now you're stuck here. We don't really have the room and the space to go around. And then once we get to our drive, we've got this low ceiling here that we have to deal with. Now, the thing that scares me about using a putter here is two things. The slower discs like more height to work, and I just don't have that much room, so I have to challenge the ceiling, which I'm not a fan of here. I'd rather throw it lower and avoid the ceiling. And the other thing is, if I do happen to go too low to avoid the ceiling with a slower disc, this is gonna grab the ground a little bit more if I do hit the ground. So let me give this an actual try here and see if I can pull it off. Yeah, don't like that. It's too short for my liking. I want a much closer putt. Now, if I take my faster speed disc, I get to challenge the floor a little bit more, and if I hit it, since it's faster, the rim's not gonna catch the ground as much. So even if I do hit the ground, I probably still get a decent skip up to the basket, which gives me the confidence to not worry about challenging that ceiling. And then just putting a nice nose up on this, the driver from here will actually flare up more than a putter will. So that's why I would pick this shot. Much closer. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. If you are interested in one-on-one lessons, our Patreon link where I do all my private coaching is down in the description below. Other than that, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Peace out.